think we all have to have, or we all could have, or we all should have, practical skills. Not just sitting at a desk, hitting keys, making diagrams and making illustrations and writing text and blogs and videos and whatever else. I think everybody benefits, and whatever their work is, we all benefit, I think, from having practical skills. At least I feel like I do. And so one of my practical skills is that I'm quite good at building things. Furniture, tables, especially tables, because they're relatively easy. Last week I had to build a fence, somewhere between a fence and a wall, depending on how you want to define it. But for that reason, I had to cut a lot of wood, and that's why I was using my chainsaw. So it was kind of on my mind. But anyway, since I mentioned chainsaws, I thought I would show you my chainsaw. It's as easy as that. Well, actually, it's not as easy as that. Managing a chainsaw takes a good amount of responsibility, and you got to know what you're doing so that you don't get yourself in trouble. Because a lot of experienced chainsaw workers end up killing themselves with their own chainsaws just by freak accidents. So you obviously don't want that to happen. So anyway, they're a lot of fun, but it's a powerful tool and pretty risky as well. So you got to respect that. But I think having practical skills, I think, benefits a person in other aspects of their life. I grew up, assembling and disassembling bicycles, playing with Legos, for example, and I think that gave me certain manual skills, but also kind of a thought process that goes with it. And I used to say to myself that construction was reality, because I would always start with an idea, and then of course I would have to modify that idea based on the reality that I encountered, working with materials and things. One always starts with an idea that's rather simplistic and then encounters reality. And that's how we gain experience, practical talent, but also some level of humility. If I didn't have practical experience in life, namely through construction, if I then had to manage employees, but I was managing them only from the perspective of my ideas and not my experience, I think I would be much more demanding, much more haughty, and I wouldn't be a good boss to those employees. I've known people who will currently remain unnamed. I've known people who don't have any practical talent in life, but they still have to manage employees. And what I've observed from those people is they don't do a good job of managing those employees because they're functioning from their ideals, but they themselves don't have any practical experience applying those ideals. So they'll tell an employee, for example, do this, it should only take you 2 hours, or it should only take you 4 hours. Well, if you've ever done construction, then you know that you can talk big, or as we used to say in Generation X, you can talk a lot of shit if you don't have experience, because you don't know the difference. Or I should say a person. A person can talk a lot of shit and make a lot of demands that they think are okay if they don't have the experience to back it up. But I, for example, have done many projects where I thought it would take a few hours. I remember one time putting in some new cement on a floor. I told my now wife, I said, this is only going to take 30 minutes, and it took 4 hours. And this wall that I built last week, relatively simple construction, turned out beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We just painted it yesterday. Turned out really beautiful. But my initial impression was that since the overall structure was relatively basic, it was only going to take 4 hours. I estimated 4 hours, and I think that by the time I finished it, it was probably closer to 12 hours, including paint. So, that's an example of me gaining practical experience between my ideal and reality. And I think that helps me be more patient with other people, because I know that they can look at a job and think, oh, it'll take 6 hours. I can look at the same job and say, oh, it'll probably just take 4 hours. And it might end up taking 12 hours. But if I were a boss with no practical life experience, I wouldn't have that perspective. And like I said, I know very well a particular person who has had as many as 500 employees or more, but without practical life experience, very demanding, very haughty, very simplistic in thinking in terms of the confrontation of those ideas with reality. So again, that's just something that I've gotten out of doing construction. I've been doing, light construction since I was a kid. We used to race BMX bikes. We used to have to build our own ramps. That's probably how I got into construction. And it was just one thing after another. And by the time I was 14, 15, I was building furniture. And even younger than that, I was playing with Legos. And I used to build a lot of models, model planes, especially, sometimes tanks, military stuff. So anyway, I think practical skills help us in various areas of life. All right, so now rather quickly, I'll get back to that research article. I've already talked a little bit about practical barriers to exercise. That was point number 2. So let's get into this research article that was just published about 2 months ago by now. This was published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine, 2024, volume 23, page 475.